of the. Sorry, we will be recording. We will be recording the first part, this info session part, so the FAQs will not be recorded so that we can have that really honest, frank conversation that might be needed at the FAQs. So I just want to say welcome to everybody. This is really intended to be the invitation for everyone at CSU to engage as fully as you want or don't want with the Co-Y engine. We were one of the core leading partners here at CSU. We want to maintain that core leadership within the engine as key partners for this thing. I'm going to hand it off to Mike. Oh, the other thing I do want to mention to all of you is that at CSU, the Co-Y engine is really led at the administrative level, at the leadership level. So Cass Mosley, our vice president for research, is the PI for the engine on behalf of CSU. Big umbrella standpoint, and then there will be other programming that gets led by faculty. So that is my brief intro. I'm going to turn it on to Mike.
Thanks, Danita. Hey, everybody. My name is Mike Freeman. I'm getting over a back injury, so I'm sitting. So can you all hear me okay? Normally I just more stand just to be heard. Okay, great. I'm so sorry for that. If at any point you can't hear, please just raise your hand. I'll be looking out in the crowd. I'm really excited to be here because honestly, I wasn't sure I was physically going to be able to be here. And I'll tell you why I'm so excited about that in a few minutes and just give you some context. In 1998, Colorado State University, the city of Fort Collins, and what was known as the Northern Colorado Economic Development Corporation, which now is defunct, but you might know economic development corporations or EDCs, that terminology. Those are typically private sector led economic development groups in a region. And those three partners came together and had seen quite a lot of volatility in the local economy, meaning when I say volatility, unemployment, let's call it what it is. And those three institutions were trying to determine what could be done to help people who are being displaced largely in the tech sector. And that spawned the Fort Collins Technology Incubator. Later became, what we rebranded many times. We're foolish as a nonprofit. We have 20 names. People know us by lots of different acronyms, but we are Innosphere Ventures these days. We're 26 years old, and Colorado State University, literally from day one through year 26, has been at the table in a leadership role at Innosphere the entire time, as does City of Fort Collins. Now, subsequent to that, this organization has changed dramatically in terms of what we do and kind of, I'd say, the scale. But fundamentally, we are an economic development organization. We care about science and technology, job growth around that. And so the Colorado Research Universities, to a lesser extent, the federal labs, but now we're working in multiple states, for example, in life sciences. We've run with Brian Wilson as a PI. We've run clean tech programming over 14 states, which was awesome, kind of traditional energy and renewable states. This is a bit of the background that got us where we are here today. And so it's going to rewind the tape to early 2020. And when it was apparent we were going to be in a pandemic, we obviously went through this. What you may not have fully appreciated, because you probably are the 99.9999% of the world that doesn't work in economic development, sort of a joke. I mean, people like myself pay attention to this, but the federal government in the late, leading up to 2020 was positioning itself to get back in the business of supporting regional economic development. So what do I mean by that? So if you think about an Innosphere over, gosh, what would that have been, 22 or 23 years? We very rarely got federal funding, or when we did, it was very episodic. It might be to run a program here or there. The Brookings Institution in particular, and then a couple of thought leaders, really set the stage in 2018, 2019, for how could the federal government, frankly, get back in the business of supporting national competitiveness. Guess what? It came out in CHIPS, which you all know. There was multiple pieces of CHIPS, and there are multiple programs that came out. I don't mean to bore you with these details, but I just want to kind of give you context of how we got to today. And so how Innosphere got involved in the ability to work at a regional level started with an Economic Development Administration, or EDA. You may not be, looking for grants typically from that organization, but that is the Economic Development Administration of the US. A proposal came out in 21, which was the first large scale funding opportunity for regional scale economic development. We're like, hey, we got to get in this game. I mean, we got to try. So on behalf of Colorado partners, CSU included, we formed literally a coalition that largely was intact with a couple of new folks, and got to the finals in what was called the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And for a variety of reasons, that didn't happen. But the important point there was the coalition building. So we had come together and we had determined as a region, as multiple institutions, state government, nonprofits like Hemisphere, that we were going to aspire to something bigger. That was the point of it all. And, that losing that Build Back Better was a huge blow. I mean, this, these large scale projects, you've done them, it was a real blow. But what happened with very shortly after, we got that bad news, the National Science Foundation came out with engines. And so our opinion at Hemisphere was, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a collaborator with many, many institutions. One way or another, whatever Colorado, we were thinking at that point it would be a Colorado proposal, whatever, frankly, the universities would want to do, as long as it aligned technically. So we thought, hey, life sciences, something around clean tech, climate, those are kind of areas we work in. We're going to probably be in that proposal and help. That was the thinking. Now, as we came to understand what it would take to put a proposal together at the scale that NSF was looking for, the universities kind of backtracked and said, hey, we're not really sure who should lead this proposal. And after quite long, not months, because the clock's ticking, right? The proposal's coming, so it seemed like forever. We kind of sat back and said, hey, look, we want to play a role if it's appropriate in this sphere, whatever it is. If it's supporting entrepreneurship, fantastic, great, whatever we're in. And after a couple months dialogue, the universities determined that it would be more competitive for industry to lead. And that also a two-state proposal with Wyoming would make sense because they're EP score. Now go, to the real world. We've never led a project with NSF. EDA is relatively straightforward for nonprofits. We want that kind of funding. It took an enormous lift. And again, CSU, day one for this organization, founder, denied our team, then VPR Allen, then subsequently Cass stepped up. I think like we can say that Wyoming and CSU really got us over the finish line with this project. Obviously, it benefits lots of organizations, but many of you have done NSF. This scale project was unknown to us. So that is the context. So I tell you all that, and that was a long wind up because this is month 5 of a 10-year project. And I can definitively tell you the organization you've helped found and we're executing is in a lead position across this country. We, for example, developed this grant program, got it through NSF approval in 4 months and launched it in month 5. Pretty good. Many other engines are trying to do grant programs. Got emails from a couple of people running them like, what are you all doing? We haven't even thought about this yet. They're probably going to do it next year. So why I tell you that is your participation, submitting high quality grants, helping us really think through how to deploy this money is the next critical step. It's one thing to set a grant program up. It's a whole different story to say, did we get the right types of proposals that you want to execute against? And can we show National Science Foundation, all those stakeholders, hey, this is an organization that's doing things and moving the needle in climate resiliency. Okay, long story, long wind up, because we may very well be back here in spring doing this again. So I don't think the program is going to radically change, but your engagement is so critical to this. If you don't understand the engine, what it's trying to do, how you should be leveraging it, how you get help to float your individual projects and ideas. The grant program is just one way that we're going to work with you. This is one thing. So let me stop there because I think contextually, CSU has played such a critical role, for Innosphere. For me personally, I've been connected to the organization. I was on the board of Innosphere for 5 years. Does anybody remember Hunt Lambert? probably was one of the
Yeah.
first people that came in for economic.
That's a way back machine.
Okay, yeah, my first board meeting at Innisphere, I walked in and Hunt Lambert and Mark Wadawick were there. So I'm taking us older folks back. So, you know, that's the context for me, as I'm not parachuting in brand new to this organization. And I'm, you know, we're really excited to be here today. So, we're gonna kind of structure this in two parts. I want to go relatively quickly through what is this thing called the engine and what is it trying to do. And if I'm going too fast, slow me down. You need to understand that somewhat. You need to understand mostly what is this RFP process and what are the technology areas that make sense. So I really want to focus there. And before I go, you know, full on the presentation, Betty, Tim, and Amber, would you raise your hands? So we have three key co-Y team members here. Richard, saw you walk in the back. He sits on the Innisphere board. He runs CSU Strata. So we're very tied in with the organization, and again, appreciative of you being here live and also on the Zoom. So this thing called an engine, it is a term of art to NSF. Think of it as a collaboration of lots of different partners. That's all it means. But we are an engine, whether you like the term or not. So you just got to stick with that. Give me 1 second here. There we go. You will not be able to read this, and I'm not going to try to explain it thoroughly, but I was told, I think the first day that Innisphere sort of was asked to do the proposal and made the decision to do it, they said, you need a 3-layer graphic because NSF will require it. I didn't even know what we're talking about. I'd never seen one. But the idea here is that we're trying to visually depict that in our region, we've had unique climate threats like drought, wildfire, and lots of other threats. Coupled with that is the ability to create purposeful or use-inspired research and development, and frankly, get it to market. That's all we were saying. We have a unique problem that's not just to the two states, but to the West predominantly. And most importantly, we have the R&D machine, you know, through the universities, the labs, and so on. So that's all you need to understand about that. If anybody knows how to make three-layer graphics, we're trying to simplify this and we can't figure it out. But this is a 2-state proposal, the entire state. We had a long discussion with NSF in the proposal, why we chose the entire states, not just the urban area or just select rural areas. And we said, look, we can't try to impact, frankly, the non-urban core, let's call it, you know, Cheyenne, Laramie down through the Springs to Pueblo. If we can't influence outside that region, we'll have failed. And so therefore, the rural areas of the states, we have to figure out how to engage the tribal communities in both states. I mean, you go down the list, this is gonna be hard to do this in the real world. You know, rural economic development is very challenging. So we have some good strategies how we'll do that. So I'm giving you a cue that if you see a tie into the work you're proposing and it has you know, a rural or, you know, tribal aspect to it, please note that. That'll be, you know, also in the FAQs. But you know, clearly this kind of front range area has driven the economy over many decades, and increasingly into Wyoming. We had a great discussion with somebody in the governor's office that, hey, we don't really say this in Washington, but we don't really see a line between our states. You know, really see, particularly the metro area, really have grown together from an economic perspective, 100%. That's how we see it. So community colleges, extension, those types of players in land grant universities in particular, very important. Again, you will not be able to read this, but let me tell you the strategy around how we tried to bring the partnership together. So CSU, CU Boulder, Mines in particular, and then the other research universities really drove this proposal within us here to start. We kind of filled in the team. I firmly believe one of the differentiators in our proposal is deep connections with corporations or corporates. So you might look at that list and go, hey, that's the skinniest list, if you can even see it on the chart. Each one of these companies has deep connections to either state or both in terms of what they're doing already here, their physical presence or not, or their desire to help with this project at a leadership level, meaning, you know, CEO, CTO, C-level. So I'm not going to go through all those, but these are real partners. It's not a logo on a slide or a name on a slide in this case. And then secondly, the federal labs, we've defined a very specific role for each federal lab to start with. So NOAA, for example, it's around extreme weather prediction and advanced modeling. I won't go through all these, but in the proposal, it was really clear, these are true partners, not a bunch of names on a slide. So as you're thinking of your proposal development, please go back to this list. It's on our website, it's in the FAQs. Who are these collaborators that you should be thinking of teaming with if you can? If you need help connecting to these folks, absolutely, that's why we're here. And we'll do basically kind of we're calling it I'm calling it a mashup, I don't know what to call it. But where you'll be able to come in if you have a research idea or R&D idea or a translation idea, and you want, for example, corporate connectivity, we're gonna help you with that. Now, Fuse is pretty short on this, so we recognize, hey, that's not maybe entirely feasible in all cases, but we'll help you with that. Again, all these slides will be available to you, so don't worry about that. Okay, so now the big part. So every engine had to do 4 things. One, articulate what's called a topic area. This is all new terminology for me. Like, I don't use that word every day. That just means, what the heck are you doing from a technology standpoint? So the topic area is climate monitoring and measurement. So on virtually everything you see from the engine, there'll be some version of this graphic, likely, maybe slightly different. That's the core of it. So once you get beyond the topic area, and again, that goes back to where we started around, threats and challenges. Well, these are areas of technology and commercialization we believe can create better climate resiliency across the 2 states and the world ultimately. So once you have defined that, the second step is you have to define for NSF your ability to produce use-inspired research and development. Again, that's not a term I use every day, but as I come to understand use-inspired, I get it, because what does industry do? We work a bit downstream of you as researchers, but we're working and I'll just say in my terminology, technology that matters around energy, clean energy, biosciences, advanced materials, whatever. And not discounting, apps and B2C at all. I mean, there's a place for that in the world. But that's the domain we've worked in for 26 years, is technology that is use inspired fundamentally. So the concept was, there's a commercial application for what I am doing. And that is critically important. NSF funds, and thank goodness, a lot of primary research across the United States. This is not that. It's what is my research and development that can be moved to the market? So you have to be clear about this in your proposal, or you will not score well. We'll get into the details there in a minute. So within this concept of use-inspired research and development, and I won't spend a ton of time here, we articulated a variety of things the engine organization will do. So for example, issue a grant or develop and execute a grant program, create a technology roadmap, overused term, but around these 6 areas, what the heck are we trying to do? What stage of development are we in these technology areas? We're working on that. And then so on and so forth. So the second pillar, once you get the topic area defined, is you have to describe in your region your ability to translate a technology to the market, commercialize it, whatever term you want to use. But in other words, once a technology is far enough along and there's a defined commercial application, do you have the strength to help bring the research to market? Whatever terminology you want to use. We're very strong in our engine, well, so I should say in this region, in that regard. I mean, there's Innisphere-like organizations and within your institution, lots of other places at the federal labs. We're very strong here. So again, in the translation concept or pillar area, we said, hey, like research and development, we're going to have a grant program for companies, startups. Now, this is not a research project, to further their work. So many of the startup companies that come to Innisphere have licenses from universities. So we're very, very familiar with this universe. So there's a variety of things, again, we do in translation. And then the last thing is workforce. I'll spend less time here, except to say that in your proposal, if you could utilize interns who would be partially or fully funded by the engine, for example, to advance your research or translation work, we're going to note this will be new. The application is a little unclear where you're going to do this. Note that, or if you have a strong need for a postdoc that will be fully compensated, note that. So we're trying to augment the research and development grant, the 300,000 total, with some other resources that the engine can deploy out of a separate bucket, sorry, of workforce. So we're going to try to match that up. And then when you're in the application process, if you forget to do that, we'll ask you, hey, would you like an intern, for half a year, whatever. So if you forget it, don't worry, we'll catch that with you. Okay, let me stop there because that was a lot of context of how do we get here? What is an engine? What is the COI engine? Any questions? Just, something's not making sense here. Yes, please, in the back. I'll repeat the question too, by the way.
So, you showed that little deal that had, all the various sort of technical areas that you're interested in funding. I was wondering, how set in stone is that to you? Could you start there and then build? So let's say you had a project idea that had some monitoring data component, but had other components as part of it as well. Is that within scope of this program, or does it have to be laser focused on measurement of those parameters?
You're gonna have to be pretty aligned to the topic. So the question is, the 6 areas that were defined in the, again, during air quotes, topic area or the technical focus. This is very clearly what NSF has agreed to work with us on in funding. So if you came, applied with a battery, I'll use something more extreme, a new battery technology, clearly it's going to be outside this proposal. New approaches for EV charging, not going to fit. So I think we're going to have a lot of kind of office hours and opportunities. There'll be a lot of one-on-ones you can set up with the engine team. We'll want to work with you so that you don't spend a lot of time to apply where it might not work. So there'll be a lot of upfront work to help you think that through. But I'd say that you need to tightly align, with one of the topic areas. And then maybe I'll spend 30 seconds on a broader question you asked, which is, will the engine veer off, if you will? Absolutely. NSF has mandated that every one of the engine awardees periodically, meaning, we're not sure the frequency, but probably once a year, we're thinking, maybe more frequently, go back to its assumptions about what technology areas we're working in to start. And you heard the term pivot and startup, they want us to pivot because I use wildfire as example. We're looking for really strong commercial opportunities in fighting wildfire. We're not really seeing it because what is a wildfire market in terms of putting out fires is largely the federal government, state governments, and local governments. So the market size is relatively small, but it's a huge problem as we're witnessing in the last week. So on the one hand, it's a small market. On the other hand, there's a high societal need. We have to balance those things out. And we absolutely will be expanding and contracting the technology areas over time. But right now we are set in stone. We could not change at this point, the starting point. We will. I mentioned this technology roadmap concept. That's the idea we proposed to NSF, that the technology roadmap would help us determine the technical direction. Again, your involvement in what are you researching, what are you interested in, is critical to get that feedback, because we're already looking at some new technologies now that we think 6 months-ish, maybe a little bit longer, could be technologies that we will formally say NSF, we want to add, a 7th bubble, maybe take one away, whatever we do. So the ability to change 100% is what we have to do.
Mike, you have an online question.
Okay.
From Francesca.
Go ahead, Francesca.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for doing this. I was wondering if you can speak a little bit about a line that was on one of your slides on a one-to-one matching from NSF. You suggested that is encouraging if we can match with our funding, or I don't know if you can clarify the line.
You jumped ahead of me. We proposed to NSF in our grant program on research and development that the research team that proposes would match 1-to-1. Now we're going to define match here in a minute. It's not, it could be soft match. It could be other funding you have. We'll get there in a minute. Translation, same thing as 1 to 2, because we're expecting, hey, these are companies, they should have some funding. And so the reason for that is the NSF wants all engines to leverage their money. That is a specific term, meaning if I give you $1, what do you leverage it into? Now, it doesn't necessarily in all cases mean another dollar. It could be accounted for in a variety of ways. I will get there in just 1 minute. So more questions on just how do we get here? What the heck are we doing?
Just a quick question. So the granting process will be managed within CSU or Innisphere? Well,
Nope, don't think of Innisphere. This is the COI engine. We're a separate organization within Innisphere. It's a nonprofit. It has a governance board and we'll run the whole process from within the engine.
Okay.
Yep, great question. Thank you.
Is the project itself a cooperative agreement or a grant?
It's gonna be a sub award.
The whole thing, the award itself to be,
Well, so if you applied in one,
no, I'm talking about the
Sorry.
grant itself. Is it a cooperative agreement?
Oh, yeah,
Grant or cooperative agreement.
it's a cooperative agreement
Okay.
to Innisphere. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought you meant to you as a recipient. Yeah, go ahead.
So my question was, I guess, about the like commercialization or market potential. Is that specifically like private sector applications versus public sector?
Well, market could be
Or, like,
both.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess can you clarify?
When we get to translations, do that. Yeah, so I'm gonna switch gears into you want to hear about the grants, or I bored you with 25 minutes of background. Can I move on though, talk about the grant? Okay, because this is the fun stuff, honestly. So why do we propose a grant? Because we think that the best way to keep our university partners highly engaged is to create additional funding that helps use-inspired research and the commercialization of that technology move forward at a faster pace. We know in this state and many states in the interior US, there's a tremendous lack of capital, not only grants, but private capital. And so that was our motivation. Can we play some role in pushing funding out at a higher volume? Now, in the first couple of years, the NSF grant to the engine is 7.5 million this year and next year. We're not a calendar year, don't worry about that. So the overall grant program is a couple million of that each year. Workforce is a couple million. We're doing some variety of other things. It's not a huge budget, but years 3, 4, 5, we go to 15 million a year. Then we'll be about 6, 7 million a year in grants. Great. That starts getting a little better, especially the early money. And then years 6 through 10, 20 million. So again, this leverage idea of can we take $1, at the research level, leverage it? We're going to work through that, over time. So that's the idea with the grant program is keep the universities highly engaged. We know this isn't changing the world in terms of this pot of money to start, but fund meaningful work you're doing, get it commercialized, show NSF this region can do use-inspired research. We can commercialize technologies and create market impact and achieve better climate resiliency. If you connect those dots, that's what we're trying to do. Hand here.
Understand it correctly that everything beyond the first 2 years is very much dependent on, in terms of getting the funding again from the NSF is very much dependent on how everybody does in the first 2 years.
Yes. So the question is, we're contracted for 2 years of grant funding. It's a 10-year project. Like probably all multi-year federal funding, there's uncertainty. We are very clear that some number of the 10 awardees will not move forward for any number of reasons, and we're going to ensure that it's not performance in this organization, which is why we're pushing so hard to do things like get this grant program out quicker than anybody else is able to do it. And we've got a whole bunch of things coming behind this, by the way. So this was really important for us because again, the universities were core to this proposal. And we wanted to show, hey, we can go and execute against a specific project we proposed. So again, very, very important. So I kind of talked high level about the objectives around, that use-inspired translation. I'll move on. And so let's talk about the use-inspired grant. So the objective is to really help you as a researcher move something along in the topic area, the 6 areas that probably you're already working on. The grant is relatively small to start. So if hey, this is the first step, probably not going to be real competitive at this stage. Now, in the future, we want to fund some earlier things that might take a bit more time. But we're not really in a position in year 1 and 2. We need to hit the ground running, show that we can move. So we're thinking that probably successful R&D projects are in motion. You probably have gotten some other grant funding or been funded some other means. And a research and development or use inspired grant has to be submitted from a research institution, meaning like CSU. So this is a little bit challenging because other people are like, hey, I want to put an R&D grant in. They're not going to allow that right now. In the future, possibly. And obviously you have to be in both states. So there's less options in Wyoming as, the University of Wyoming is really a single option. On the translation side, the goal here again is a technology has been developed. It's early. It's been licensed if it's a university to a company that's starting to happen or has happened. And it is a startup entity that is applying for money. A university cannot apply for translation funding. It's a company. No, so it could be a newly formed company, that's fine. But just know the distinction, right? Research to the universities, translation to companies. And just pop your hands up if any questions as I go. So let's talk about the use inspired a bit more. The 6 focus areas, again, they seem fairly narrow, but they can be quite broad all at the same time. We identified kind of 6 interrelated areas. I think, how much these overlap from each area to another area. Hey, that's eye of the beholder a bit. But the way we wrote the proposal really hung together. We made a compelling case. These are research and development assets and strengths of this region, and that we think there's high commercial potential that's already being demonstrated in many cases around complex earth sensing. So let's just maybe take 1 or 2 as examples. So companies like Lockheed, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Palantir, who are partners, are very interested in how to get better data for weather prediction, better modeling, just to use an example. So if you're working in that space, that would be the type of thing, love to see that. Methane. So CSU is a leader in the ability to detect methane in oil and gas, in agricultural purposes, for ag, and increasingly landfills and other, again, great topic, building off of the expertise of the organization. Water availability, we're in a historic drought in the West. I think obviously everybody's aware of this. So things around what can create better water prediction availability. So let me give you just again an example. One of the largest water utility in the state came to us and said, hey, we really don't have any idea how much water we're going to get on an annual basis. And we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars flying planes over the snowpack, as long as, well as hard measurement. And we have really no ability. We really don't get it. Now, at a high level, we do. So things like what are better approaches for predictive analytics for how much water will flow into a stream and into a utility system. These are the kind of examples of things in the 6 areas. I won't go too deep there. So let's talk about the use inspired grant, again. So we're thinking that we'll issue 4 of these. So it's pretty competitive. It's gonna be a little bit like the state's advanced industry process, likely. The project period we're looking for is what can you do in a year? We will try to extend, but just imagine, not trying to be sympathetic, but we're trying to run a grant, show NSF we can make progress. We want to see teams that can move. So if you have velocity already and some other funding, that's going to be the best case. Hey, let's pile more money on. By the way, we deliberately are running this process in parallel with the advanced industry program. So if you are pursuing a proof of concept grant, I know that's a lot of extra work. We hope you might be able to bolt those together. So, we can talk about that, but the timing was deliberate here in that regard. So think about a year of performance. The maximum funding, you can certainly apply for less, is 300,000, per application. We've opened the process. The proposals are due September 3rd. And then we'll go through, a selection process. Again, it'll be very similar to like an advanced industry process. If you've been through that, not like an SBIR, this can be much more protracted. So requirements, this was the question that we got on the 1-to-1. There's a lot of information on our website and in the application. What do we mean by matching? But matching, we want to see that you've got something you're working against. This isn't the only money you have. There's a variety of ways you can do that. So, we'll not get into all those details today, but that's an area you can ask questions at any time by email. We can set Zooms up if you have questions about that. One thing we do want to note is that research teams are expected to engage in some sort of entrepreneurial work. We'll provide that for you, by the way. That's not on top of your grant, like, take money from you. But we want to help you think about if the R&D work you're doing is ready for prime time to market, how are you going to do that? What is your role? When would you start a company? What, have you licensed before? How do you recruit people when you have no money to the business? All the things industry has done for many, many years. So we're going to apply that. We'll help you. You can go to Rocky Venture Club, any other accelerator, incubator, whatever. We don't care. But we want you to get some entrepreneurial support over that year period. And so we'll, give you those options. If you know what help you want already, fantastic, write it in your proposal. If not, once you're awarded, we'll work through and say, okay, what's appropriate for you? Now, obviously, we recognize in many cases you're teaching, you're researching, you have your own lives. So, we're not going to throw a big, heavy program on top of you. It's really going to be the fundamentals. Make sure you understand that. You will have to provide some regular updates. You will be a sub-awardee. So we have a responsibility, as you would be, in any grant situation to sort of report back. We're going to try and make that light. Check in about every 6 months. Again, we can give you more hands-on support if you want it, less if you need it. Kind of will depend on where you are, what you're doing. Any funds that are unspent, you return. Obviously, there won't be any we're expecting, but just set the expectation. Okay, so in the grant you'll write, oh, yes.
Yeah, question. So you were talking earlier about like potentially you're developing models or data sets that could be used by existing companies. And I'm a little confused on like, if you think you're looking for researchers that already have partnerships with companies to come in together on a grant, or if you're looking for researchers that want to like, commercialize their products that they're developing separate from companies that are already maybe looking for those products.
I think it could be both. So let me give you an example of, without any names, because people, kind of are, we're trying to promote this is coming. So, private company needs some better, data. And we're pretty confident one of the universities in the mix has it, and we've been helping get those folks introduced. That will be a research project, because this company's going, hey, I need this data to better, predict what I'm looking for in their particular case. So that will be a research project. Now, conversely, if a research team has a valuable data set or is still perfecting it that could be licensed or deployed by a private company, that's probably still going to fall in the R&D category, because likely the university would have to be the applicant. Now, if that data or asset, whatever's been developed, has been licensed or a startup has deployed it, then that's going to trigger or kick you into the translation. So it's a little bit of a, not gray zone, but we can help you work through what the right pathway is. But again, research and development grants can only come from the university and translation only from startups. So another Lockheed Martin with you couldn't apply to translation. It wouldn't make any sense.
In case one, like where the research team has a company in mind that already is demanding the product, would you name them as part of the team or letters of support, or how would you manage that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Again, we'll work through the nuances, because every situation can be slightly different. We understand. Yep. Good.
I'm just confused about the different companies. NVIDIA, for example, is a Colorado company, or do they have offices here in Colorado?
NVIDIA?
NVIDIA, for example, because you mentioned.
Yeah, they have staff here, but they're doing deep collaboration with almost most of the federal labs that are collecting large data sets on climate. Yeah. So they don't have, like a large physical presence, but they're here, but they're mostly interested in the research and development the universities are doing, and NOAA in particular, and NCAR. Those are the two main labs.
I'm just thinking in terms of workforce development down the road. Is the workforce development supposed to be in Colorado and Wyoming? And so if we're working with companies that are mainly outside, is it going to be?
So workforce development for the engine, and I went over that really quickly, is building the local workforce.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's more, that's more workforce development in terms of training. Right.
Yeah, it's building the climate resiliency, air quotes, workforce. So for example, right now, we're basically, there's no available labor in Colorado. I mean,
That's
right.
More training than job creation.
Right. So our challenge, our workforce challenge in Colorado is reskilling, as the term is. And then we're not importing as much labor as we had. just for a variety of reasons. So that's the workforce challenge, is we don't have the workforce of the future to build this industry right now. Guess what? Not in aerospace, not in life sciences either. So it's not unique to climate tech. So, but we're saying, hey, we're gonna take very specific steps, internships, apprenticeships, postdocs, all of that. Now, that is very focused on the 2 states. So an intern may work at NVIDIA, but they're gonna be physically in one of the 2 states.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the workforce, except that if you want interns on your project or postdocs, just let us know. Yeah, that's a great question. Let's see. I think I covered the main things here. Again, 300,000, just talk to us about, where do you have other resources to get to something like a 1-to-1? Obviously, you can do more. That's great. Yep, hand over there.
Just wondering, so like, what if you get 20 applications in the first cycle and you like 10 of them, but you can only let 4 through? Are they allowed to apply for future cycles? And
Oh, absolutely.
per
Yeah.
year, 1 cycle per year?
We're capped on budget, so that's, and what we're anticipating, I'll say, is that we're gonna get a pretty significant number of applications. I mean, not right away. Our objective is we'll spend the entire year budget in this cycle. In other words, from NSF perspective, if we can get you moving faster on great research projects and translation, that's better. Cause you have more time to show progress when they're coming back and saying, hey, what did you guys do with our money? And are you moving as a region? So, now conversely, we're only gonna fund great applications. And so we may not fully deploy all the money in the cycle. And if not, we'll turn right back around and do this early next year, again, in concert with the state of Colorado Advanced Industry Grant Program. So we're trying to time that so that hopefully you can apply for both at the same time for what's called proof of concept. Okay. Yeah.
Can the matching funds be other federal dollars?
Yes. Could be, yeah, it could be. So question is other,
The way we have it written, right, is
Oh.
non-federal.
oh, sorry,
Matching.
Tim.
So there's a whole list on the website that really goes through the leverage concept. So I would encourage you to go through that.
Okay.
And
Sorry about that.
take a look at it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm glad Tim's here,
And-
who architected this.
And yeah, and I guess the other part of it is, I know you said a couple times that translation grants can't be led by universities. It's actually written universities can lead that as well as startups.
Okay, but
Okay.
it has to be a startup venture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so thank you for clarification. This is Tim, by the way, so he's the COO for the engine. Okay. All right, thanks for clarifying that, that was important. All right, keep going here, so I got to the whoops, sorry about that. How will these be evaluated? My guess is if you've written grants, I'm sure most of you have, this is gonna be pretty straightforward for you. First is the technical viability of what you're working on, the project viability, scope. I mean, so what we see oftentimes in grants and companies raising money is there's just not enough money, frankly, either in a grant or in a private round of funding to actually do what you need. That gets out of scope. I mean, advanced materials are great examples. You tend to need lots and lots of capital up front. So that's what we're kind of looking there for, scope and time frame. Can you do something meaningful in a year? So getting this translation potential, if you're pursuing a research and development grant, where does this go? Have you thought about, after you've done the research work, what's the market potential? So you have to be thinking about that, and we want to see your thoughts in the proposal around that. Your readiness as a team, who are you? What's your capabilities? Who are the other folks on the team? Have you executed against other, grants, potentially, or programs, whatever that may be? Many of you, we do a ton of support for SBIR grants and AI grants. But lots and lots of great partnerships you develop over time with corporations and others. What does that look like? How much of that kind of thing have you done? And then lastly, this idea of potential impact. So, the R&D is commercialized to the market. What does that look like? So we're not gonna have you do really detailed analytics there, but what is your thought process? If you can, if you had a technology that could substantially detect wildfires quicker and get, resources to the scene much faster, fantastic. That's good societal impact, right? We're not gonna ask you what's the air quality impact of that. I mean, nobody can predict it. So just get your thoughts on that. So I think somebody had their hand up. Go ahead and jump in. Sorry, I've kind of got the screen minimized.
He wrote a question in here, Joe Von Fisher. Did anyone here, can this grant include academic partners, subcontracts at non-CSU universities?
That's a fabulous question. Have we come, I don't think we've heard that one yet, Tim, have we?
We haven't, but we have what, 7 university partners, so you would expect that certainly the other 6, and I guess then we would take a, you know, kind of a one-off case here to understand.
Yeah.
What the other subcontracts outside of those universities would be.
Yeah, thanks. My question was just that. I mean, obviously, I would imagine we could have some contracts or relationships with other, you know, Boulder or somewhere like that. But if I had a colleague at a different university outside of Colorado, Wyoming, would that be a permitted subcontract? Or are we trying to keep all the money here in the 2 states?
Well, let's get back to you on that because I'm looking at Tim and I have an opinion. I'm not sure I want to share. No, because I'm not sure it's right. I mean, we need to, we'll get, I mean, this is the purpose of these meetings. We're gonna, great question. Don't know. I'd say the advice today is partner with somebody locally, 100%. We'll work on, if you've got a long-standing partnership with another university, we'll need to take that into account.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, you're saying you're still not sure if locally, like if we have an affiliate faculty member who's working with a company and we're working in partnership, you're still not sure if they could be on these?
No, it was a university as a sub-awardee. Let's say CSU applied for an R&D grant and brought in Penn State. Could you have Penn State as a sub-awardee? We didn't envision that. That's what I don't think I'm ready to.
But like local industry partners?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're doing collaborative work with University of Wyoming or wherever, a community college, absolutely. Those are highly encouraged. In fact, you score better with higher levels of collaboration, even though it's a relatively small budget. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Okay. All right, let's go to translation. So I think same concept here, technologies that are moving into the market. There's a startup in the mix. That's what we're looking for here. Same 6 topical areas. These grants are bigger. Or can start at 250, go to 750. This funding is for commercial purposes. We've started a company. We need to do certain things. Many times they can't be funded by grants. Because again, the industry lives in, lots of companies come to us and we understand the restrictions with SBIR and other funding around commercial activity. So it could be hiring your first salesperson. It could be some additional product development, could be a whole variety of things. But these are going to, again, for the measure is commercial value of the money, not the R&D value. So if you come in with a grant here, there's a bunch of R&D that needs to be done. That's probably not going to score real well. So again, up to 750. Now let me talk about this grant in particular. If you already are a startup and you are applying for the early stage retention grant from the state of Colorado, guess what? This is your match. We try to size it so that you could use this funding for what's called the early stage retention, ESRG. And you may not have applied for that. You might have only done proof of concept potentially in your work. So there's a second grant that state of Colorado has. And in Wyoming, they have an SBIR matching program. So we're also mapping to that. If you're collaborating with the University of Wyoming, we'll help you figure that out. But this is pre-seed funding. If you're going to the market, looking for angel funding, for example, maybe small venture capital, that's what this should look like. And there's a very specific use of funds and therefore commercial purposes. Okay. Now here, the match is 1 to 2 engine dollar levers 2. Tim, do you want to just talk about the matching here real quick? Just to make sure I tripped on the last question there.
Yeah, I guess, again, right. Terminology we're using is leverage, and the in the RFP we actually list out certain things that could be used as this leverage, right? Cash, in-kind contributions, collaboration partnerships, existing programs, data research, innovative technologies, capacity building, public-private partnerships, existing community assets, and then this non-federal award stacking. So I would encourage you to take a look at that RFP, and the website also lists out what those are.
Okay, great. So big thing to point out here, in the time frame you take a translation grant, you need to participate in an entrepreneurial program. So you need to go through the Hyper Accelerator, Rocky Venture Club. You need to work with You know, West Wall at Enroll, Innisphere does things, obviously. We're not requiring you to do any particular program. In fact, we're gonna encourage you to find the right program. If it's, you know, you do it virtually, you know, with someone in California, fantastic. But at this stage, we want you to have some real building blocks of how is this company gonna get built? Because these are gonna be early opportunities still. So you will have to be prepared for that, because that will take some extra time when you apply for these. There'll also be kind of regular convenings, meaning we do a lot of entrepreneurial education as an engine. You know, we're not mandatory to be there, but we'd like you to engage in that. It's for your benefit as a startup company. You'll have regular updates. You'll be assigned an individual who will work with you through this time period to look like a, you know, a board member. They're not on your board, but they'll, you know, be with you. Hey, are we executing against this money? Are we doing the things we need to do as a startup should? Really to help you just keep pushing along so you can raise more money. Because obviously there's not nearly enough money to start a company, you know, just on a translation grant. So we got to be pushing in that direction. You need a final report. Again, same thing, you know, unspent funds come back to the engine organization if you don't deploy it. Also looking for 1 year of performance. So things are relatively quick. You know, can I put a salesperson in the field and see results in 6 months, or we're getting early traction in sales? As an example, that'd be the kind of thing you say, hey, we're trying to fund that, and that's what the resources would go for. Okay. Very similar evaluation criteria, with the exception of a couple of things. Technical viability, same concept as the underlying technology that's being built upon, you know, because someone might come straight into a translation grant, and we may, especially in the short term, we may not see them in R&D capacity. So we're gonna try to figure out, hey, what's the underlying IP you're working from? Same thing on project viability scope. So if you're, again, trying to you know, conquer the world with 750,000, hey, that budget just isn't aligned. You know, you got to show, you know, you can do something meaningful with this money. Big one here. Many of you may have not done this, do market analysis. If you're doing, if you come in with an R&D grant, one of the services that you be provided is research. So at Innisphere, we have lots of paid databases and researchers. We do tons of work on market development. Those are the kind of things we'll work with you either on as an R&D project or awardee, or in the startup. Now, we expect the startup to have done some of that work, frankly. So if you come in and say, hey, I haven't done any market analysis, you're going to be at a big disadvantage on this one. Also, we're going to want you to have an understanding of, as I build this company, how much capital do I need? You know, it's not going to be precise, but roughly. So some sort of capital plan. Team readiness is not just the team today. Who's the team that we're gonna have to bring in as we grow, those kind of things. Same concept, engagement partnerships, you know, high quality engagement, other universities, private companies, great, those are plus. And then still that impact. So in the final analysis, that you know, is what you're doing, does it make a mark out in the marketplace and from a social perspective? Okay, let me get to how to apply, which is the most important thing. So if you don't know the website, it's co-wyengine.org. You'll find it quite quickly. These grants and the RFPs for the grants are online already. You may have already found them. The grants are you know, open July 22nd. They're due September 3rd by 5 p.m. Mountain. Selection will be about 4 to 6 weeks. We're gonna try to move really quick on that. Then we get flooded with applications, probably gonna look at more like 6 weeks, we'll see. But you know, we're gonna try to move fast, so you know, quickly. And then you know, we're thinking that start dates would be about 10 weeks after submission, right? So what we need to do is sub-award with you. Hopefully many of you know that process. We're still learning, but we've got infrastructure now to do that pretty quickly. And then there are a whole bunch of, again, you'll get these slides and these are on the website. Lots of webinars coming up. So this is be very similar to this, but if you start working on your proposal, you want to jump in and pop a question in the chat, or all of our contact information at the engine is on our website, which we get a lot of spam, but feel free to email or call us. But those are our real emails. We'll respond to you. Internal to CSU, You've got, Denida, who you met earlier, and the VPR's office that are quite aware of this proposal. There's multiple resources, but ultimately, if you don't know who to contact, find somebody on the engine team, we'll get you to the right place. The one thing we have not set a date for is this kind of mashup where we can bring private companies and other collaborators in to see, hey, can we help you facilitate a match with somebody pretty quickly? We'll get that out early next week. We're still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. And how to do it, whether virtually or in person. So we're a little behind on that one. But these are set. So again, hopefully lots of opportunities. We will be doing things, office hours that we haven't published yet. We'll just set blocks of time. You can sign up for 15 minutes, one-on-one Zoom call with our team. Just, hey, I'm working through this question or issue, or how do you think I should approach that? So really trying to be as hands-on as possible with you. So main thing, as I'd say, get the RFP, read it, start working, and then what questions do you have? Let us know quickly. Okay. All right. I think that was all the slides. I'm going to stop sharing that for a minute. Okay. Let's see. Looks like Josh has a hand up, and then I'll go to Tim if there's any questions in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Josh Roberts, Larimer County Office of Emergency Management. Really appreciate the info and the interest, in helping some of the common needs that we might all face with respect to climate resilience. Just wanted to tone out, I think we'd certainly have a willingness to explore partnership or communicate some of the deep needs we might have. A couple of top things that come to mind. We're undertaking a deep study right now with respect to some challenges we're experiencing with liability biomass, that is the slash resulting from various forest and wildfire mitigation treatments, among other things. And part of the study is to address this challenge with a set of solutions, notably to explore solutions with some good co-benefits, using this material as a resource and not just putting it up in the smoke. In other words, obviously there's tremendous connection, to climate resilience there. And in addition, we're wanting to and attempting to develop or acquire some innovative mapping and data tools with respect to wildfire risk and predictive analysis, response, and mitigation efforts to include use of AI predictive analysis, field-based applications to help improve with more precision and understanding of previous treatments, types and varying volumes of fuels reduction, et cetera. And then to just integrate those with the family of models that are available to the partnership collaborative. Obviously I could go on and on, but I just wanted to tone out, Mike, really appreciate you putting this together. And with respect to the use-inspired, research and development elements mentioned, I'd be happy to connect with anybody, if anyone would like. So I'll drop my email address in the chat. So thanks again, Mike.
All right, that's Josh Roberts. If you want the name, we'll get you connected if you're looking to, connect with him. So I have a little bit more time. Betty, do we want to stop recording now? I think maybe because we're an hour, it might get quite long. But feel free.